Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage Chair of the RPAC Trustees Fundraising Committee, Lee Brown.
Welcome back. Did everybody get all the coffee you needed so that you are ready for the rest of our agenda, which is amazing? I'm Lee Brown from Concord, North Carolina. That's right, New Hampshire people, y'all don't say it right. I am your 2018 RPAC Trustees Fundraising Chair, and I am super proud to introduce our next two speakers. The first one actually needs no introduction, because y'all should already know him, our very own Jerry Giovanello. Cheer for him, please. There you go.
Another fun picture for us.
He's been NAR's chief lobbyist for 17 years, and he's been with NAR 37 years. Before joining NAR in 1981, Jerry was chief of staff for two members of Congress from California, a Republican and a Democrat. Prior to his Capitol Hill experience, Jerry worked for National Journal, a weekly magazine covering the federal government and public policy issues. He also served as a U.S. Army officer in Vietnam. Now with Jerry today is U.S. Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. If you don't already know him, you're fixing to love him too, and by the way, he's one of our Realtor champions in your newly launched round two. That's right. Perhaps no other member of the U.S. Senate embodies the American dream more than Senator Scott. Growing up in a single-parent household, he watched his mama work 16-hour days to keep the family afloat. While struggling in high school, a mentor helped him realize you can think your way out of poverty, and that financial independence is a stepping stone for success. Senator Scott went on to start a successful insurance business, as well as to become a partner in the aptly named Pathway Real Estate Group. His federal political coordinator, Michael Sally, where's Michael? All right, keeps the business running while Senator Scott tends to our nation's business. Senator Scott has been a Realtor champion from Charleston City Council to the South Carolina State House, the U.S. House of Representatives, and now the U.S. Senate. He currently serves on the powerful Senate Finance Committee, where he took a leading role in negotiating the final tax reform bill, as well as the Senate Banking Committee, where he serves as chairman of Housing, Transportation, and Community Development Subcommittee. On the Banking Committee, he has been an advocate for expanding credit scoring options, growing access to affordable housing, and reforming the National Flood Insurance Program to keep it viable. At a time when many Americans are pessimistic about Congress, Senator Scott is your needed dose of optimism, and he's genuinely a humble, thoughtful, and amazing guy. Please join me in giving a warm Realtor welcome to Senator Tim Scott and Jerry Giovanello.
Thank you, Lee. That was a very nice introduction. We were talking backstage, the Senator and I, and you have a book coming out?
Yes, Trey Gowdy and I am writing a book on how to unify our country. We are very polar opposites in many ways, and we think it's time for us to focus not on politics. It's not about politics. It's all about how we get this country unified again.
That's terrific. When will that be out?
It'll be out April the 3rd, so we're almost out there.
That's great. That's great. You've had a great career as a public servant, from Charleston City Council to the U.S. Senate. What was the drive, the motivation?
I think a major part of my motivation for public service really goes back to my mother's good example of a hard work ethic. She was a nurse's aide, which means that she changed bedpans and flipped patients 16 hours a day, and then she'd come home and she'd see me and my brother was a classic, wonderful student. I was not classic or wonderful. I remember, Jerry, to tell you the truth, the one night that changed my life was when I flunked out of high school as a freshman. She came home from work and she looked at my report card. She looked at me. She looked at my report card, and then she pulled me out of bed at about 11:30 at night. And she said, "Son, I've been praying for you. I believe you have greatness inside you." And then she introduced me to something called a switch. And she pulled the greatness out of me, actually. Now, for those of you not familiar with a switch is a Southern apparatus of encouragement. And she applied it from my belt to my ankles, and I was thoroughly encouraged. And the second thing that led me into public service was a mentor, a guy named John Moniz, who was a Chick-fil-A operator, who taught me that as a kid who was not doing very well, if I would just take responsibility for my life, good things could happen. So with a powerful mama, and so with a powerful mother and an amazing mentor, the two of them pushed me towards using my life to make a difference. And since I did not have the cash or the resources, using my time to help others is what they taught me would lead to success. And I'm very thankful that I had two great role models that really helped me understand the need for public service.
Wow, that's terrific. That's just terrific. What about, I want to spend a minute or two on tax reform. As you know, we felt that the House bill was very discouraging for home ownership. And you were on the Senate committee, or Finance Committee, and you were part of the conference committee that tried to meld the two bills. Well, from the House to the final bill is vast improvement. Could you talk about the inside?
Sure. Our House colleagues, who are really good people, I served in the House and I like my House colleagues. They had a fundamentally different position on real estate and, frankly, business transactions than we did. They were far more bullish on our ability to overcome bad policy from my perspective. Don't tell anybody I said that, by the way. And in the Senate, we were working our way through it. The good news is having a little real estate background in my business allowed me to go to the table and advocate. And so when it went to conference, things like the 2 and 5 versus the 3 and 8 was on the table, and they needed my vote. So the good news is I had the opportunity to advocate on behalf of common sense. And the more you explain it, the more logical it became. And unfortunately, what is true is that we have very smart people who are very, very busy on 1,000 issues. So getting folks to focus on the real estate transaction, what it means to the home buyer, what it means for the American dream, not talking about the politics of it, but talking about the impact back at home. I think that had a lot to do with our ability to maintain the 2 and 5, and frankly, not to get our mortgage interest deduction down to $500,000. We were able to negotiate it back to $750,000, which was a big win from my perspective, and keeping the second home as well.
Got to say thank you.
Absolutely.
You made some of us look very good. So.
Well, I want to sell my home in a couple of years too, so you know, there's that. Just joking.
Yeah. Realtors were very active during that tax reform bill discussion for actually over a year or two. And I know that we sent calls for action, we had fly-ins and everything, but your key realtor contact, Michael Sally, was probably in your ear a little bit.
Yes, it is fortunate and unfortunate to have Michael Sally as my conduit to the real estate world. It is fortunate because he is a passionate, driven, Energizer bunny who never sleeps. It's unfortunate because he lives about 3.5 minutes from me. So it is not uncommon for Michael to show up at my house to, give me some advice. I didn't ask for the advice all the time. I was like, Michael, you can come by my office between Monday and Friday, 9 and 5. He didn't listen to me. The reality of it is Michael and I own a set of jet skis together. So every time he wants to borrow the jet skis, this summer they were at my house, last summer they were at his house. During this tax reform conversation, he stole the keys. That's the truth. So it is good to have Michael. He's one of my best friends and has done a great job of advocating on behalf of common sense, and he is relentless. Anyone who knows Michael Sally from South Carolina, he never stops. It's just who he is.
That's great. Well, when you were in the House, you represented a district in South Carolina that's pretty much coastline for the most part. How important is the National Flood Insurance Program to that area?
It is essential. We know that that's true throughout the country. Without the flood insurance program working the way that it's supposed to, it would have a negative impact on about 40,000 real estate transactions every single day.
Wow.
So it's essential. We can fix the flood insurance program from my perspective. There are lots of ways for us to do that, but when you have represented, my first congressional district was Charleston and Myrtle Beach. Then they redrew the lines. It was Charleston and Hilton Head. So I had all of the coast of South Carolina in 2 terms in the House, though I only served for one of those 2 terms. I got elected twice. The reality of it was that those residents were always talking about it, and spending 20 years in the insurance business, flood insurance is an absolute necessity. And one of the ways that we fix it is by focusing on the repetitive losses in the flood insurance program. 1% of the losses represent 30% of the payout. And that 1% are repetitive losses. They've lost more than $1,000 in more than 2 or 3 incidents in the last few years. And we keep rebuilding those. It is not in our best interest as a nation for us to continue to do that.
Yeah, we supported the House bill, which passed, which deals with repetitive loss and some other reforms, but it seems to be stuck in the Senate. Do you have any views on how we get that moving?
You know, at the Banking Committee, the good news is we have a good bipartisan coalition working on banking reforms. I believe that bipartisan coalition will make some progress this year on flood insurance and on relaxing some of the standards so that we'll see more home ownership as a reality out of the Banking Committee, hopefully this year.
That'd be good news to us. The National Association of Realtors is going to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Fair Housing Act in a big way at our mid-year meetings and so on. What are some of your comments on that act and whether it's...
Yeah, 50 years after the Fair Housing Act, so much has truly changed in our country. 50 years ago, institutional racism was a reality. Today, we have done a very good job of uprooting and eliminating the institutional aspects of racism, and that has been so positive and powerful for this nation. We are still healing from our challenges, but the reality of it is today, many of the obstacles faced by people of color in first-time home ownership has to do with access to capital, the down payment, and are we using all the information available that shows that these folks are credit worthy? The FICO, the Fair Isaac, is not always fair because it doesn't take every aspect of one's credit worthiness into consideration. I'm supporting and sponsoring legislation that would allow for other iterations of credit scoring that would include your phone bill, your utility bill, your rent payments, as a way of understanding a complete profile of the credit worthiness of a borrower. I believe that would increase our opportunities.
Yeah.
And so the 50 years have been an amazing amount of progress. Now we can fix some of the challenges by making sure that we include all information.
That's great. We do support your bill, this alternative credit scoring bill. The House has several bills that we've featured also.
Awesome.
It's very important
Absolutely.
to us here. You're known as a senator who is not afraid of a bipartisan approach. Do you get lonely out there doing that?
Lonely. Yes, sometimes it is unfortunately in our country, compromise has become a bad word. And honestly, you don't need to compromise. You really do need to find common ground. And I'm a rare senator, not because I look for ways to work in a bipartisan fashion. And many of you know, obviously, that I'm a rare senator by looking at me. I am one of 3 in the United States Senate. I am a member of the Bald is Beautiful caucus. Yep. There's only 3 of us who have manned up and joined the caucus. Myself, Cory Booker, and Chris Coons. And the 3 of us have decided, because God blessed us with a beautiful head, we don't need the hair to cover it. So that's funnier than y'all are laughing, by the way. Anyways, we have decided to work together on a number of legislative priorities to include what was a part of the tax bill. Both Cory Booker and Chris Coons are my co-sponsors on the legislation Investing in Opportunity Act, which are creating opportunity zones to attract capital back into the distressed communities so that we can confront poverty and hopelessness, and I believe challenge opioids and violence in our rural and our inner cities.
That's a terrific approach. Thank you for your bipartisan approach.
Absolutely. We need more bald people in the Senate, by the way.
Could we maybe spend a minute on President Trump? Is he an asset or a challenge to the Republican agenda?
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. What's a man to do? You know, listen.
I was going to ask that last, but then I thought you might.
You thought I would leave. You were right, actually. I think his Twitter account is challenging, but we don't agree. Some people disagree with me. This is okay. I think, honestly, our policy position has been constructive for this country. There's no doubt that tax reform has been a huge win. The banker regulations that we're getting ready to work on in a bipartisan fashion.
Next week.
His position on violence in this nation is a step ahead of most of the Republican Party. He's moving the party in the right direction on that issue as well. I think on issues of regulatory reform, he's been spot on. The Twitter account, he and I sat down after Charlottesville, and I was very critical of the president because of the comments from a racial perspective that I found offensive. And we had a sincere dialogue, and I found him to be warm. He listened well. We don't agree on the past, but I'm looking to work with anyone, anywhere, at any time who wants to move this nation forward. Period.
That's good. Every Tuesday in this Senate, the Republicans have a luncheon that's private.
Yes.
Until it's over, and then people leak whatever you said. But the point is, what are those like, those luncheons?
Well, now I know the definition of the freshman 15, by the way. In the Senate, we have a lunch on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. All Republicans on one side, and the Democrats have the same lunch in a different room. In the House, we were lucky to get together one morning a week. So literally, behind closed doors, what you'll hear are a lot of conversations around strategy and what we can do to make things move forward. And I talked to my good friends in the Bald Caucus. Cory and Chris tell me that they're having the same conversation. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we understand the definition of moving forward sometimes.
That's interesting. Now, you served in both the House and the Senate. What are some of the differences? Or
Yeah, my running joke is I'm still House broken and not Senate trained. The Senate is a whole different animal, far more influential, far more powerful as an individual. The House is a team sport where the team is defined like a basketball team or a football team. The Senate's more like a track team. Every single person is running their own race. And it is harder to get senators, Republicans or Democrats, on the same page. It's like herding cats. Whereas in the House, the decisions are made in leadership. And you either fall in line or you buck it. In the Senate, every single member thinks that they are the leadership because the rules empower the individual senator to hold up other senators' legislation, which gives us a facade of friendliness, but not necessarily the depth of abiding friendships. Yeah. So it's a tougher body in many ways, but it's a far more influential and powerful body because you can literally hold up the House and the Senate one member at a time.
That's interesting. It's very hard to lobby the Senate in many respects.
Absolutely, because the fact is that the entire system is hardwired for individuals, whereas the House is hardwired for group thinking. And it's easier to get 20 or 30 Congress members in the same space, good or bad. It is harder to get 3 senators in the same space, or more importantly, it's hard sometimes to get 1 senator to join the 99. And we've seen that over the last several weeks. We're voting at 3 a.m. in the morning because one person refuses to relent on one issue, and that is their prerogative, that is their right, and that is part of the reason why the Senate is viewed as the saucer that cools what's in the cup.
Well, I think that's encouraging.
Yeah, listen, moving from the House to the Senate, you had to learn how to like Jell-O and naps at 2 o'clock, it's a different body.
You've served with many fine people. Could you maybe name a few men and women in the House and Senate that you...
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. One of my favorite folks in the House is a guy named John Lewis, who he and I had the privilege of going to... He's a great American. Man. He's a true American hero. For those who are not familiar with John Lewis, his efforts in the 1960s moved this country forward by a century in less than a couple of years. He literally put his life on the line. And when I first came into the House, while he's a Democrat, he embraced me and sat me down and took me to his office, and for hours we walked through some of the important issues, and I thought that was fantastic. Obviously, one of the true heroes in the House on the other side of the aisle for me is my best friend in Congress, Trey Gowdy, who has just served so well this nation. He is spot on, one of the persons with the greatest integrity. I get along really well with Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii, fantastic woman. She joins us for dinner. There's about 5 of us that get together. I'm still a House guy in my heart. So it's Kevin McCarthy, Tulsi, Joey Kennedy from Massachusetts, Trey Gowdy, and a guy named John Ratcliffe from Texas. Right. So those are my homeboys and girl. So it works out well.
Maybe you'll write a book about that.
Well, one day, I hope we will.
Everything. What about the upcoming elections? What's going to happen, or what do you think?
Listen, the country is in an interesting mood. The polls go from the Republican Party, my party, losing the House by losing 24 to 27 seats. About 2 weeks ago, we were going to only lose about 16 seats. The one thing we know about 2018 is that every prognosticator expects us to lose between 10 and 20 seats in the House. It is the natural progression of midterm elections. On the Senate side, the map is far more favorable for us. I think we have 8 competitive races. 2 are Republicans, 6 are deemed to be seats held by Democrats. Our third most vulnerable Republican in the Senate is Ted Cruz in Texas, and I don't consider Ted Cruz in Texas vulnerable. I think we end up maybe gaining a single seat in the Senate. The map is good, the mood is not. So overall, I would expect for us to lose some seats, but maintain a majority in the Senate. And I think we will hold on to it in the House as well. But if we don't figure out that America's not that concerned with Republicans and Democrats, they're concerned with Americans. If we don't get that right soon, there's going to be a third or fourth party in this country.
I think several of the previous speakers have talked about this year, the lack of kind of a collegiate atmosphere in America and so on. But I think some of us out there remember 1968, which was a year that really tore the country apart. Do you have any suggestions how we come back together?
I honestly believe that one of the ways that we heal this nation is start seeing ourselves as one American family. I gave a series of speeches a couple of years ago about why it is so important that this nation to see ourselves as one family. And the reality of it is you fight with your family. I know I do. And it's okay for us to not get along with everyone in our family. It is not okay for us to constantly and consistently question your intentions and whether or not you belong in the American family. That is destructive for our nation. I think it's very important for us to remember that we have serious threats outside this country. Iran, North Korea, China's moving in an aggressive direction from an economic standpoint. Russia is looking to replace us in every way, shape, or form. If you ask me counterterrorism, if you ask me what is the greatest vulnerability to this nation, and I say this sincerely, it's us. It's us. We will either survive as one nation or we will be picked apart in little factions, and that will create a situation that makes it hard for us to be the world's only superpower, the city on the hill, the light in the midst of darkness. That's who we are, and we need to be that.
That's incredible. It's very inspirational, and I think your background, you've been insurance, real estate, you've been in public service and everything. What's next?
Obviously you've just said I can't keep a job, but wow, thank you very much, Jerry. Love you, brother. For me, I am a guy that believes in my faith. I'm a faithful guy because I'm a flawed individual. And so for me, what's next is looking for ways to restore hope and create opportunities. My mentor, John Moniz, he died at 38 years old. I was 19. He spent the last 4 years of his life creating the first 4 years of my new life. And at his funeral, my mission statement was to positively impact the lives of 1 billion people with a message of hope, my faith, and opportunity, the reality that in this country, financial independence is a cornerstone of the American dream. I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing that.
so true. I don't think any more questions can top that. So I want to thank you on behalf of our realtors. You're on our president's circle, and that's important. You've been a champion and a very inspirational speaker to us. Thank you very much.
May I have a parting word?
Yes.
Thank you. I have 30 seconds left, so I'll use it. Let me just say to all of y'all, thank you for what you do. The National Association of Realtors, you guys are one of the most powerful lobbying forces in the United States of America, not simply because you have a great organization, and you do have fantastic people. Jerry and Michael Sally and Ken Wingert, fantastic people. But what makes y'all so different is when you come to Capitol Hill as ordinary citizens to tell us what is in the best interest of this nation. Your numbers, your intensity, and your vision truly impacts us. This is a rare organization, 1.3 million folks. And I will tell you without any question that the American dream is so oftentimes not found in the hands of elected officials. They're in everyday people's hands. My dream is that we have more people like you guys and gals, politically active in a bipartisan fashion because you believe in this nation. And if you do that, our best days are ahead of us. God bless you.
Thank you. Great.